Hey everyone, what I'd like to do today is have an informal chat about my YouTube recording setup. This is something I've been thinking about a lot over the last few months, and over the last week I have been recording so many clips to test different setups, different cameras, different camera positions, different lenses on those cameras, different angles for those lenses, wide angle, tight in, lots of different things like that. And I've been trying to paint a picture as to what I need as far as upgrading my cameras and what works and what doesn't. Now, I will say that, like most content creators, I do have an action camera. I've got the GoPro Hero 12. I mostly use that on holiday for recording clips with my family. I should use it more for my YouTube channel. I also have a phone, and I will occasionally use this for clips or taking some photos for different videos. I've got some old cameras there as well, which I will sometimes use just for a quick clip or whatever. But for the most part, I have a 3-camera recording setup because this is how I mostly record my videos. I'm normally doing tutorials, or I'm normally talking to you guys like this, reviewing a product. And you can see 2 of those cameras right now. This camera here can be considered the webcam. And if I go here, you can see there, that's what that camera is recording. It's actually getting quite a good angle just now. You can see all the mess behind me right enough. And also you can see the overhead camera, which is above me here. So I've got the overhead camera I've got, which is kind of in the webcam position. I've also got what I always refer to as the main camera. And the main camera is kind of at this 30 to 45 degree angle over here to my right here. And it views me here. Now, I've had this for a while. This is something I will have to revisit. But yes, that's the 3rd camera in my 3-camera setup. And this is the camera I normally talk to if I'm having a discussion, if I want to talk to the camera, etc. So I have been changing things around. I have been trying different lenses, and I am looking to buy new cameras. I am looking to buy new lenses, just something that makes everything look a little bit better. Now, before I go into each of these camera positions and just talk about some of the challenges I think I have, I want to unbox this box because you can see I have a big box here. And inside this box is a new lens, which I purchased used from eBay. And I'd like to show you what it is, and then we can talk about all of these lovely camera positions. So this is the lens. It's the Sony full frame G FE Power Zoom 16 to 35mm f4. And this is a lens that I've been looking forward to buying for a long time. It's quite an expensive lens. It retails at like £1,200 or so, but I managed to pick it up used for just under 700. It was like 680, and it looks like it's in mint condition. The seller has definitely looked after this. So this ticks a lot of boxes for me because it's lightweight, because it's small, and because it's got that wide angle, which is really useful for me when I'm talking to the camera. It just covers a lot of different situations for me. Now, right now, my Sony a7C is recording with a little kit lens, and it's at 45mm. So that's out with this range. But let's just see what this lens looks like on the overhead camera. So here we are. The 16 to 35mm is now on my overhead camera, and I'm recording at 16mm, which is why you can see my whole desk. I don't want to show you all of this. This is just what this wide angle captures, but you can see that it goes all the way down to 35mm, which is still maybe a little bit wider than what I would normally record. And if you're curious, this is the lens that I was recording with before. It's just a little 28 to 60 kit lens for the A7C, and I love this little lens. It's great because it's so lightweight, so small, but it really does punch above its weight. Now, as I'm sure you're aware, with a full frame camera, you can also crop it down to an APS-C kind of angle, so you get a 1.5x crop, and if I change to that now, we might get a better angle. So the APS-C crop factor has been applied. I'm back at 16mm, but you can see that it's a little bit tighter in, and I can go all the way down to 35mm, which gives me this. So this is a wide angle lens, but because of that crop factor, it effectively turns it into a 24 to 52.5mm lens. Not the ideal range that I want for an overhead camera shot, but it's very useful and it will actually do for the rest of this video. I think this is an okay position. I think I've got the range that I want for the rest of this video. So what I'd like to do now is talk about the 3 camera positions. So we have unboxed my new lens, and the FE Power Zoom 16 to 35mm lens is still being used on my overhead camera. But at this point, what I'd like to do is switch over to my main camera. So this is what I would call my main camera. It's my Sony a6500, which is an APS-C camera, and I'm using the Sigma 16mm primed lens. So it's a fixed lens, 16mm, with an equivalent of 24. And that combo, that Sigma lens with the a6500, they have been together for me for years now at this point. I picked up the Sony a6500 used a few years ago. I got a really good deal at the time. I think it was like 500, 600, and it's still holding its value around that price in the UK, 400, 500 maybe. And I think it's still a fantastic camera. Now, it has been superseded by the 6600 and the new 6700 as well, but I just can't bring myself to sell it yet because I don't think I have any little small form factor camera that replaces it at this point. Now, I will point out that I'm probably not aligned properly. I've been messing around with my tripods so much over the last week that I kind of look like I'm not at the right angle, but that is a problem that I've had with this position. This position it's not great. I really don't like it, if I'm honest. So to give you a little bit of history, in previous YouTube recording setups, I always had the camera in front of me. I always had it that way. But in this room, it's kind of difficult to get the setup that I want, the recording setup that I want, because I've got a window there, which you can see. I have wardrobes at the back. I have the door there. And the only other real position that I could put this is over there maybe, but there's no PowerPoints over there, which just makes it a nightmare for all my equipment. It makes it difficult to get to the wardrobes. And I think when I first moved to this house, I was faced against that wall here. So I was kind of reversed. But that wasn't great either. It just made it a nightmare to navigate this room. So this is the best setup that I can do for this room. So what I did was I put the webcam above the monitor and I put the main camera over at this angle. But it does create a few problems because it's very hard to get that camera in a good position. Even if it looks straight for me, you know, in the shot, it kind of looks like I'm at an angle because of the wardrobe. It looks like it's sliding, but it's not. It's just a weird way that the camera is positioned. And I must admit, I really don't like this camera angle. It's not flattering for me. It's, you know, if you're too close up, it just, you know, you can see my jeans and you can see the back of the chair and things. It's just a weird angle. I don't think it's an angle that I like. In long term, I think I'm just going to eliminate it. I think I need to put, if I'm going to continue to have a 3-point camera system, I think this camera needs to go somewhere else, perhaps even just like a wide shot that shows what I'm working on, maybe what I'm reviewing, but I'm just not a fan of this angle anymore. Now, with regards to the camera, I think that's a good distance. It's a 24mm equivalent. I think that's an okay distance. I think the camera, as much as I love it, yes, down the line, if I could replace it with something a6700, FX30, or just another full frame camera, that might be an option. But I think for that third camera, second camera, whatever way you look at it, that is maybe something that I'm going to have to revisit. And maybe what will happen is when I change one of the other cameras, the camera will then be relegated to this position or wherever I move it. I would say though, I've always operated in this kind of 3-camera setup over the last few years, and it's worked really well because I can talk to the camera and then I can switch to the overhead camera, and then I could even switch to the webcam like that, things like that. It works really well, but I kind of feel like this angle isn't necessary. It's overkill, and it just means I need to set up lights differently as well. And this is another problem. For any of you out there that record on YouTube, you're probably aware that this is an issue. It's maybe something that many of you have not considered. But when you're setting up YouTube recording setup, or any video recording setup, you have to set up your lights. The problem with having 3 cameras in 3 different angles, all in the same area, is that they don't complement each other from a lighting point of view. So you've got this scenario where the lighting might be perfect here, but then that makes the lighting bad in the overhead camera, and it doesn't make it good in the webcam. So you're always trying to compromise the lighting so that it looks good in all 3 shots. You're messing about with the ISO, you're changing exposure, you're changing lighting. And it's just one of those things because you've got 3 different positions here for the lighting, and they don't always work well together, which is another reason why maybe I should change from kind of talking into this camera to talking into this camera. So this is the Panasonic S5. It's a full frame camera, and it has the kit lens 20 to 68 millimeters, which is a fantastic range. It just covers pretty much everything that I would need in this scenario. And in many ways, this is the best camera that I've got as far as the color range, as far as the recording options. It's a fantastic camera. It's performed very well, but it's got one glaring issue. And it's one that most people are aware of. This camera here has a major issue with autofocus and just focusing in general. And I realized that just after buying. I'd read that the autofocus was pretty poor, but I thought I'll work with it. I'll get a discount. It should be okay. I couldn't work with it. It was constantly breathing in and out, focus going in and out to try and find focus. And it was a nightmare. So what I did with that camera was that initially I had the Panasonic S5 over here in this position, and I just had it as manual focus. And it looked good. When I changed from the Sony a6500 to the Panasonic S5, there was a marked improvement. You could see that I was using a better camera. You could see that the image was better, but it didn't have autofocus. It just had manual focus. And I thought, okay, I can live with it. But then I tried it over the last few weeks. I've tried the Panasonic S5 here. I tried it as an overhead camera, and I thought, okay, the autofocus is bad for humans, not good for eye tracking. Maybe it works better with objects, but no, it was terrible. And I actually did an unboxing for something trying it, and it was just breathing in and out. So what we have with the Panasonic S5 in this webcam position is an amazing camera with one major flaw. Now, if you know anything about cameras, you'll know that the S5 is a few years old now, and it's been replaced by the S5 Mark II. Now, the good thing about that is that S5 Mark II stands shoulder to shoulder with cameras such as the Sony a7 IV, and it's a lot cheaper than the a7 IV. Now, what they did in the second version of this camera is they drastically improved the autofocus. They've got this new phase detection autofocus system, drastically improved. It fixed the glaring issue with this camera, and everyone raves about it. So one of the things I've been thinking about is that I either keep this one and buy a second S5 Mark II or a new S5, the improved version, and keep this one kind of like manual focus there. And I'll buy the newer version. It doesn't have any autofocus issues, and then that's the route I go down. Now, there's a few reasons why I might not go down that route. One being that most people say that the autofocus is still better in the Sony world. And the other reason being, well, I have, as you've seen so far, I have a few Sony cameras. I've got a few Sony lenses. Sony has a much bigger ecosystem when it comes to lenses, and you can easily switch those lenses between their APS-C cameras, the 6000 range, and switch between full frame cameras. So it gives you this option to move your lenses around different cameras. I'm already invested into that ecosystem. So the easiest thing to do would be to go where the best autofocus is, which was great for me for overhead camera shots, etc., and go to that world where I've already got a few lenses. That being said, I'm still keen on testing the Panasonic S5 Mark II. It's one of those things, like, there's a lot of benefits to buying multiple lenses for the same camera system. These are all Sony full frame lenses. And there's a lot of benefits to doing that. If I've got 3 or 4 cameras from Sony and I've got a collection of 6, 7, 8, 10 lenses, I can move my lenses around between the cameras. I can always get the angle that I want for the most part. I do still have to invest in other lenses, but once you've tied into the ecosystem. You've got more flexibility as to how you record things, what you record. Whereas if I buy into the Panasonic world, I'll start with the kit lens. I'm going to have to spend a few thousand to get the lenses that I want. But what I would say though is, right now I'm using manual focus here, and I think it looks good. I think it looks good. I think the shot does look good. I have noticed a weird that it's maybe not showing up so much there just now. Maybe it is, but I have noticed that when I do the HDMI out, there's a little kind of yellow line down there, so I'm going to have to address that. That's probably a weird setting in the camera. But for the most part, I think the Panasonic works amazingly as a webcam right now, as the webcam shot. And going back to what I was saying about the main camera, this is always the camera that I've spoke to when I've spoke to my audience, the YouTube world. When I've spoke to the camera, it's always been this angle, but there's a lot to be said about maybe what I do instead. If I can scroll to the right part, maybe what I do is simply talk to this camera instead. It seems like a better angle. It's a little bit more flattering with me. Let's be honest, I'm a guy in his mid-40s. My best years are behind me. I need all the help I can get when it comes to color grading and lighting. So this is maybe a more flattering angle for me. And yeah, I think this is a great angle to have a camera, and I think this just works. So yeah, some things to think about with that one for me. Using the Panasonic S5, terrible autofocus, but for a webcam position, it's not an issue. But I would like to, try the follow-up. Okay, let's talk about the last camera position. And in many ways, this is the most important camera position because, like I said, if you've watched my channel, yes, I'll talk to the camera sometimes, but for most of my videos, I'm unboxing something, I'm showing something in close-up like that, and you can just see, look how good the autofocus is there. Really, really good, which is another reason why I keep going with Sony. And that's why this overhead position is important. I do unboxings, I do tutorials, I do walkthroughs, I talk about things, and it's nearly always me talking to the webcam, the Panasonic S5 in this instance, and showing you something on camera. And yes, I'm at the wide angle just now, but like I said, with that crop, I can adjust the angle in a few different positions, big box, little box, zoom in and all that. So the overhead shot is important. It really is important to the videos that I do. And arguably I should put my best camera there and put my best lens there. So in the future, I'm hoping to buy a zoom lens, and I want to ensure that I use a full frame camera here. Now, what I want to show you is this. This is the Sony RX10 Mark II. And the Sony RX10 Mark I was the first overhead camera I think it was the first overhead camera I ever used, and it was amazing. And then I upgraded to this, which I got for an unbelievable bargain on eBay. I think at the time it was selling for like £1,000 new. It was like £600 used. And I paid £218 on eBay because the company marked it as faulty just because they hadn't inspected it. And it was mint condition. So this has a 1-inch sensor. So it's not as good as APS-C or full frame, but it came with an amazing piece of glass built in, 24 to 200 millimeter equivalent. And it's called a bridge camera because of that. You can't change the lenses. This is what you get. And this has been amazing for me over the years. It records at 4K at 30 frames per second. I've never had it overheated, any overheating issues. I've never had any issues with it, period, But what I have noticed over the last year or so is that it's starting to look dated because it's several years old. The autofocus just wasn't that good. I mean, I used to think it was good, but over time, technology moves on. There was times when it was kind of searching and it would focus on the wrong thing in the background. Part of that might have been because of my settings, but there's no way getting around from the fact that it was just using an old autofocus system. So this has been an absolute amazing camera over the years for my overhead camera, but this is a camera I'm going to sell. It's just a bit dated now in comparison to the other cameras that I've got. It has served me well, but it's time to sell this and put it towards lenses and cameras, etc. The other lens I've got sitting here, well, I've got two. This was the one that was on at the beginning of the video, which was on my Sony A7C. And my Sony A7C continues to be my overhead camera right now. So this is the kit lens that you get with it. And this is the Sony G Master full frame 1.4. It's a 24mm lens. And yes, this is an amazing lens, very powerful lens. You know, it just the footage you can get from this is unbelievable. It's one of those things though, it's a prime, so I need to think of where I'm going to use it. This is best maybe in the webcam position or in the main camera position there. Essentially the Sigma lens over there has got the same equivalent as this full frame lens. It's been an amazing lens, but it's not as versatile as the zooms that I have. So I need to think of how I use this. I'm not going to sell it yet, but this is a lens I want to keep for a while, and then if I don't use it, I will sell it. Just, you know, I don't want to keep too many lenses that I'm not using. But as I have been saying, right now in the overhead camera shot, I'm using the Sony a7C. Now, when I purchased the Sony a7C, I was buying that as a kind of vlogging camera, as a camera that I can do lots of kind of clips, just show you some products, show you some footage, record in the car, record when I'm out and about. But it's been so good compared to the other cameras that I thought I need to integrate this into my 3-camera setup. And one of the tests that I've did over the last few weeks was what works best as an overhead camera. And it is the Sony a7C, which is above me. And essentially what that is it's a variation of the Sony a7 III, but with slightly better autofocus. But I'm using it not as a kind of, you know, such a compact light camera. I'm not using it like that. I'm using it as an overhead camera just now. But my aim is either I replace that and I get another portable camera, another compact camera, a7C Mark II perhaps, and I keep this one up here because I think one of the things I'm looking for my overhead camera is full frame with good autofocus. And I think the a7C is proving to be a very good camera from an autofocus point of view. When I bring something up to the lens, it's zooming in, it's autofocusing, not zooming in, it's focusing. And there's less searching than before. You can see it's just, you know, it's finding what I want to show you very quickly. I'm very happy with that. So moving forward, I'm going to be investing probably in another Sony camera for autofocus. Yes, that Panasonic S5 Mark II looks great, but I think from an autofocus point of view, the Sony performs a little bit better, and that's what I want for my overhead camera. So as I was saying, I have been moving between all of these positions, all of these different camera shots, and I've been testing the cameras in all of these positions. And I think the way that I have it just now is maybe optimal because I've put the worst camera, the Sony a6500, in the position that I'm not going to be using actively anymore. But yeah, I'm getting there. I think over the next couple of months, over the next couple of weeks, months, I'm going to be trying to find a solution that works best for me. I'm trying to find something that fits into this camera recording setup. Maybe I will go from 3 cameras to 2. Maybe that's the most practical thing to do moving forward. But that's something I need to explore. I need to start figuring out what lenses to buy and what cameras to buy. And it's a lot of money to do these upgrades. That's the thing. And on the subject of money, you can see that some of the cameras and lenses that I've got, they're quite expensive to buy relatively for a YouTuber, I guess. But what I've always done with my cameras is try to buy used wherever possible, because you can save so much money with used cameras that sometimes it means that you can buy 2 cameras instead of 1, 2 lenses instead of 1. And it's different to phones. You know, like with smartphones, you always have to worry about firmware updates and you have to worry about the batteries dying and then you can't use the phone anymore. It's different with cameras. Actually, it doesn't pay to buy the latest camera in a way, because the first year is where they always have bugs and they're trying to iron out all those problems. So it kind of pays to be a year or so behind. And then you see all the photographers, all the gearheads selling their expensive cameras for like half the price. You save a ton of money. And as you can see from, some of the lenses, again, this is another one I bought used. Most people, not all, but most people who are into the, cameras and gear, quite a lot of them do look after their products. They look after their cameras, they look after their lenses. And even if they don't, as long as the sensor's okay, as long as the lens is okay, a few marks here or there is not going to be the end of the world. So wherever I can, I'm going to try and buy used, but sometimes it's maybe cheaper to go to the grey market, or sometimes it'll be cheaper to do a discount. But ultimately, what I'm trying to do is get value, whether it's used, on sale, buying from Hong Kong. What I'm trying to do is to get value for the cameras and the lenses that I'm going to buy moving forward. I hope you've all enjoyed having a quick look at my new lens, the Sony FE PZ 16-35. And I hope you've enjoyed this informal chat about my YouTube recording setup, a small behind the scenes look at how my camera's set up, and an insight into what my approach is moving forward, where what I'm trying to do is replace my older cameras with newer ones and better ones. That means new lenses, new cameras. I do think the Sony a6500, as good as it is or has been, is starting to look a little bit dated. And I also think that this viewing angle is probably not the best. And in this position, well, I've just adjusted the manual focus. You can see it looks a little bit sharper now because the focus was set for me kind of leaning forward. And that highlights a problem with this angle. This webcam, the full-size webcam, I normally have it all cropped like this, and I hide all the crap in the background. And yes, it's quite good that I can talk to the camera in this way, but it does show all the mess in the background with the tripods, the camera bag, the laptops, etc. If I'm going to be recording in this position in the future, maybe I need to tidy things up a little bit and maybe change the angle a little bit. I don't know, but I'm quite happy with it for now because I think the priority is the overhead camera. Right now, my Sony a7C is recording with the new lens because I was testing it out, but I want to bring that out of the equation. I want to be able to use my Sony a7C with the power zoom lens and use it for vlogging, using it for recording clips. And I want to replace the overhead camera here with a full frame camera, probably Sony because of the autofocus, and get a good zoom lens that allows me to zoom down and show you different products. And if it's got a good zoom range, it means I can go down and show you things like on a motherboard, etc. But autofocus is very important for an overhead camera, and I'm quite impressed with what Sony is delivering. So I think moving forward, what I'm going to do is buy a full frame Sony camera and a good zoom lens. It's going to set me back a couple of £1,000, but I will be selling this. I will be selling the Sony a6500 at one point, probably. And I will be trying different cameras. I'll maybe invest in a few of the lenses, invest in a few of the cameras down the line. But the priority, get a good overhead camera, get a good zoom lens, and then we'll take it from there. As I said, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video, but I'd love to hear from you all. So please do post a comment below. I'd love to hear what your camera setup is, especially if you are recording videos for YouTube or Twitch or TikTok, wherever. I'd love to hear what cameras you're using and what lenses you're using. But until then, thanks for watching and take care.